Welcome to the Tiffany Marie Brannon Show. I'm Tiffany Marie Brannon, and today we have a special segment. The one, the only Harry Cole is here, editor-at-large for The Sun and the host of Harry Cole Saves the West. Harry, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for my hat.
Of course.
It arrived mysteriously at my front door today.
Diet Coke addicts must stick together, which reminds me, before we start, we have to do the very important, thing of
Crack.
We can't talk without doing this, right? It's got to become our tradition. Are you ready?
All right, here we go. Ready?
1, 2.
I've already done it. Cheers.
Cheers.
I might take my hat off, if that's all right.
You can do
Is that
whatever.
allowed?
You can do
I don't want to
whatever.
mess my hair up.
It's too late. It's too late.
How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I missed you so much. How was the UK?
Yeah, still going. It's all right. It's still there, just about. Suffering under old Keir Starmer, but it's actually warmer in DC. It was cold. It was very cold and grey.
I'm sorry, but I saw you had some caviar, so it couldn't all be bad.
You're spilling secrets now.
Was there Diet Coke with the caviar is my real question. Or was it
No,
just...
I had a zero Guinness. I had a zero Guinness with it because I was doing Dry January, but I may have slightly fallen off the wagon.
You lasted a full week. I'm really proud of you.
10 days. Well, 9 days.
We'll count it. It's fine. So I thought what might be fun is considering the insanity of this week, which means I do need a drink, a really not Diet Coke one. Let's talk about crazy women and how they're destroying the world and the fact that white women are stupid and Iran is burning and there's like at least 12,000 people we know that are dead. And these crazy American white liberal women and, UK liberal women are marching in the streets for nonsense, basically.
Yeah, it does strike me as weird. I mean, this year has been crazy, right? We're 11 days, 13 days in, and we've already had one dictator in South America in cuffs. Cuba's on the brink. We've had Greenland being threatened. And then obviously what's happening in Iran has been slightly squeezed out. But I'm just thinking, where are the people on the streets in support of this? At the drop of a hat, you had all of these campuses across America being dominated by camps for Gaza, peace camps, marches, anti-Israel protests at the drop of a hat. And yet, here we have women, men, normal working-class Iranians rising up against a tyrannical, Socratic regime. And if you go to the campuses of liberal American universities, they're silent. Where are they?
That's a great question. I would love to know the answer to. I mean, I was reading a lot of articles about it this week, and, white liberal women, a lot of these college children, because that's what they are, they've completely stunted their prefrontal cortex from ever developing. But they are silent and absent and are cosplaying victim 24/7, 365 days a year. Yet when actual victims, actual women who are actually under threat, whose lives, their very lives are on the line, and they're standing up against evil, because that's really what this is.
Yeah.
It's evil. I mean, mass murder, the honor killings, the brutality. Iran ranks 140th out of 144 ranked countries for gender parity, for discrimination against women, for every possible, women violation of rights. I mean, they have no problem, the party that says they're pro-abortion and pro-choice and my body, my choice and all the liberal feminist nonsense. Where are they when the 10-year-olds, the 6-year-olds, the 9-year-old little girls are getting sold to 60, 70, 80-year-old men, even guys in their 40s, who then forcibly marry them, forcibly rape them as their wives, quote unquote, and then get them pregnant and force them to carry those babies? Where are the pro-choice feminists now? I would love to know. What do you think it is that causes them violence?
I think it's two things. I think it's two things here. One, it's Donald Trump has sort of fired the starting gun on all this with his strike last year on the Iranian nuclear facilities. It's clear that this climate of protest in Iran has been allowed to take place within a wider context of the Middle East and fluidity in the Middle East, which has been driven by the Trump administration. And because it's Trump, they automatically hate it. It's TDS, it's derangement syndrome at large. They see Donald Trump involved with it, and therefore they automatically hate it. So they will never give this administration the credit it deserves in Gaza, in Venezuela, wherever it is. They will just automatically be against it. And let's not beat around the bush either. It's because of the Jews, right? It's because Israel are in open support of regime change that the left are automatically hostile to it. And also, don't forget that vast parts of the hard left, kind of like Iran has been there, has been supporting all of their mates in Hezbollah and Hamas and destabilizing the Middle East for decades now. Look at people like Jeremy Corbyn in the United Kingdom, can't bring himself to criticize Iran explicitly, the regime, because he's been on the side of the guys that he calls his friends for all these years. So because Israel wants this, because, Mossad and the CIA have been actively involved in destabilizing Iran for a long time, and rightly so in my view, again, they're automatically, because Israel is pro-something, the left is automatically on the opposite side. And it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's kind of, they used to be more subtle. They used to be better at hiding this. But Iran is one of those ones where they're flushed out. They have to suddenly actually, pick a side. And so far, sadly, we're seeing them pick a side, and it's the wrong side. And then you've got someone, again, like Elon Musk, who just today has allowed Starlink satellites for free in Iran to allow, they've turned, the regime have turned off the internet. We wouldn't be knowing about these tens of thousands of killings. We wouldn't be seeing these incredible scenes of protest without access to Starlink, which is given, it's a game changer, really, in terms of leveling the playing field against the regime versus the people. And yet, again, because it's Elon Musk and he's a bogeyman for the left and they hate him because he's rich and successful and a bit crazy, and because he supported Donald Trump, he's never going to get the credit he deserves. He's seen as this malign force, when actually, if you look at his track record in providing access and satellite access to repressed people, it's pretty good.
It's not just pretty good, it's incredible. And I wish more people would actually put their money where their mouth is, literally and figuratively, like Elon Musk does. What's really concerning to me is that we now have an entire generation of people like the ones you're describing who just hate the Jews, who just hate Israel, who just automatically, discount anything that's pro-Israel or that Israel could benefit from. And it's not just on the left anymore. It's creeping into the right. It's creeping into our side. And that's really scary to me, the anti-Semitism that's being...
I agree that there's also a really interesting gender balance thing. We'll get onto the woke right, the anti-Semitic right in a moment. But just sticking with the left, though, we had some really interesting polling that was kicking around last week. A pollster called Scarlett Maguire in the UK. It was looking at actually the radicalization of women and the hard left. And, more traditionally, you'd think you kind of have this sort of Call of Duty online gaming kind of community of young men who Donald Trump tapped into really successfully in 2020, last year, 24. No, 2 years ago. Hang on, what year is it? 2024. And you think of isolated, radicalized young men tilting to the right. But actually, if you look at the where it's going with female voters, it's going to the left. And, it's kind of beyond hot girls from Mandami. It's into the fact that younger female voters and, people under the age of 30 are putting things like Gaza above the economy in the West as the most important, their own economy, on their own jobs, they're putting international affairs from an anti-Israel perspective as the most important issue facing them in their lives, which is just obviously gibberish and nonsense. But I don't know whether TikTok has fried their brains or what they're teaching them in schools these days, but there's a whole generation of younger women coming up who are of the hard left, and it's kind of scary.
It's terrifying. I'm terrified. I have a niece who's 7 years old, and I'm so scared for the world she's going to grow up in with all of these women that are older than her that are now like the high school, college, who she should look up to, generationally speaking, as she's, has aspirations, who she'll work with, who will be her superiors at whatever job she has. God help her, and God help all of us.
Well, I do think we're seeing some evidence of, and I hope we're seeing an evidence of a sort of post-woke backlash on American campuses. If you look at some of the universities, we were looking at a bit of this last year. If you're looking at some of the southern universities, some of the non-coastal big universities in the south of America, they are seeing a massive rise in applications from people all over America who just don't want to go and be brainwashed. They don't want to go and join the kind of mad bandwagons in these lefty liberal colleges. And there is beginning to be a bit of a backlash to it. But I do think that later millennial women and Gen Z women are going to be a really, really interesting voting bloc in the next 20 years, because they're coming from a really, really far left starting point. And the sort of usual thing of people kind of growing out of it once they get to start paying taxes, once they start having a job, once they start having families. People are having families much later. People are buying houses and becoming invested in the economy so much later, and they're kind of stuck paying rent and in jobs they don't want, in low-paid jobs, saddling themselves with tens of thousands of pounds of debt for a degree that's barely worth the arts degree that's barely worth the paper it's printed on. Then you kind of think, and then they go, oh, well, I don't really have a stake in capitalism. And you go, well, you can kind of see where they're coming from. So I do think policymakers have really failed, and I do think it's going to be a major problem in the coming years.
It's going to be, and it's both a direct result of feminism, right? Coming in and essentially masculinizing, if that's even a real word, an entire generation of women, to where now women, and I'm sure you saw the study that just came out last month around Christmas, women now have less desire to ever get married and have kids than men do for the first time in history. Women have no desire to, like, the natural urge of, like, when you played, little wedding dress when you were a kid and you dressed up and you dreamed of what your life would look like, who your husband would be. You played little sweet games. They don't do that anymore. They've been so indoctrinated, even at the very young age, that now, if you're considered, there was an article that came out a couple months ago, is having a boyfriend embarrassing now? This is a real article.
Is it?
Yeah. Like, having a relationship as a woman is embarrassing. Like, oh gosh, like, you're one of those women. And that's the problem. And what the left has done so brilliantly, and I do think it's a master plan. I do think China's pushed this on us from TikTok. There's a reason why it's banned in their own country. They did the opposite, where now they have no women. So they don't want us to have the women procreating either. I really think that that's an undercurrent of this, because the best way to collapse a society is to destroy the family unit. And if you're going to destroy the family unit, you need to mobilize a part of that population. And by creating hyper-masculine women who have no desire to get married and have kids, who basically, are all drugged up, whether it's just like an SSRI antidepressant, which a massive amount of the population is on, or birth control, which we now scientifically know completely alters your brain chemistry, how you view men. Like, that's why women on birth control, on the pill, typically go after men that are very feminine, that are more like beta. And the minute they go off the pill, they're attracted to, like, the more testosterone, masculine men. This is all a part of a giant sort of like web that we now find ourselves in the middle of. And what's going to happen is, unless we start course correcting now and start figuring out big ways to reach these brainwashed women, which, I mean, white liberal women, over 80% of the youth female vote voted for guys like Zohran Mamdani in New York. Over 80% voted for a socialist Muslim who would happily enforce something like, restrictive Islamic laws, who believe.
I'm not quite sure Mamdani's going to do that. What he is going to tax the very people that voted for him out of existence. Liberal college-educated graduate women in New York who've been living in New York for less than 5 years, were the backbone of his voting bloc, and they're the people that are going to get squeezed when he starts implementing his policies.
Do you know what is really interesting? I was listening to a bunch of liberal women talking on their podcast this week, and
I bet that was fun.
I really needed to go for, like, a massage, a therapy session, and a giant run after that, just to vent the steam inside my body. But what
were they saying?
This is what they've recognized. And this is why, in so many ways, they're smarter than the women on the right, and they're more strategic than us. They've figured out that critical mass, well, I'll ask you, what do you think the percentage of the population is needed to reach critical mass for cultural change? What percentage do you think it is?
25.
Nope, lower.
Really?
Keep
what
going.
is it?
3%. No,
3%.
3.5%.
How does that work?
If only 3.5% of any population is vocal and is pushing towards something, whether it's a cause, whether it's, the crazy pro-Gaza people, the people that are marching in favor of Nicolas Maduro and not in favor of the actual Venezuelan people who have lost 20% or 20 pounds of their body weight from starvation in the last 2 years. It only takes 3.5% of any population to be loud enough to create a cultural change, to reach critical mass on media, in the ether. And so when you think about what a tiny percentage of the population that is and how it is very easy to hook on to these people that, what is it really? Well, these are people without a home. Women were created, in my opinion, in the image of God, like with God's plan in the world, but whatever people think. Women were created biologically to be, with a man, to have children. Like that's our genetic biological calling at the very least, right? There's a reason why guys can't carry babies and why women do. So there are certain predispositions that we have that when taken away, when we don't have children to mother, because, look at the UK. The UK has aborted 48% of Gen Z, of British babies.
That's an astonishing fact. Is that true?
Yes. 48%. In fact, the Telegraph just came out with a thing I saw this morning that said unless, because, they're pushing, there was a pro-migration narrative going on, but the reality is starting now, deaths in the United Kingdom will outweigh births.
No, totally. If it wasn't for mass immigration, Britain would be a massively declining country. Our birth rate's been in decline for a long time.
Yeah, but you go back and it's because, they've aborted 48% of the population of babies right now. So what does it say? If women aren't having children and aren't naturally finding their identity and their purpose and calling into something greater than themselves, because I truly believe that children are like the last step in adult character formation, because they require you to be selfless and to give and pour yourself into something that's not you. But because we have an entire generation of women that are childless, psychopathic cat ladies, they are desperate for identity that they do not have. And so because they don't have kids, they're looking for these, fake BS, marginalized people groups or protests they can march in or crazy shirts or men that they can hate. Because they're really bitter, miserable, lonely people that have gone against their biological calling.
Is that all it is, isn't it? There's also a significant chunk of them who've decided to put a career and trying to play on an equal level playing field alongside men.
Yeah. And we're not. Like, I don't know what kind of stupid woman, I'm sorry, it's the truth, believes that men and women are equal. We're not equal. I would like men are physically stronger. Men are better at things than I am. I'm better at things than some men are. We are complementary, but we're not equal.
In a physical sense, but in the workplace, I think they give us a pretty good run for their money.
There's nothing worse than a female boss. Let me tell you.
I disagree. I think that I work very well under a female boss.
Well, that's because you work well under anybody, Harry. It's you. Come on.
I don't know. I think you need both sides to run a good place.
I think that it's probably different as a woman. Women, especially women in our world, it's extremely competitive and it's very backstabby and petty. And it becomes almost like swimming with sharks all the time. And you can never let your guard down. And it's a little scary. These women are a little scary.
I think that's probably wider than just the media.
That's true. But I think we're probably crazier than everybody else, especially in politics. Like, what are we doing?
It does take a certain, right?
Yeah. Do you think that there's going to be strong women figures in the UK in the Reform Party going forward?
Yeah, I think there is. I interviewed Leila Cunningham this week. Again, fascinating. She's got 7 children, 5 of her own, 2 stepkids. She's been a successful and unsuccessful entrepreneur over the years. She's a former prosecutor. She defected from the Conservatives over to Reform. She is of Egyptian descent. She's a Muslim. She's very moderate. She's very anti-jihadi. She's been incredibly outspoken on the grooming gangs. She is a really, really impressive character. And the problem with Reform have had has always been it's been a bit of a one-man band. It's been the Nigel Farage show. But as he edges closer to possibly gaining power, he knows that he has to expand out his, I mean, there's just so many, he can't do it all by himself. And London's a really interesting one. Traditionally, massively socialist, massive Labour stronghold, sectarian politics in central London has creeped in through the Islamic community, who are running the sort of old wards of central London that Labour used to think they could take for granted. Really, since the war in Iraq, they've sort of been beginning to lose control over very, very inner city boroughs of London, where the white community have essentially been displaced over the course of 50 years, and the politics has followed that. Whereas also you've got the surrounding suburban London where people are overtaxed, squeezed, they're taxed to get the train, they're taxed when they get on the car, they're taxed on their wages, they're taxed on their, like they're just, they are the most taxed people in all of Britain, live in the outer sort of donut that goes around London. They get a vote for City Hall as well. So really interesting race shaping up in London between whether Reform with a slightly left field candidate, so to speak, not politically, but a different candidate, a moderate Muslim mum of 7 is not your kind of typical Reform character. And then it kind of goes back to what we were saying. We touched on a little bit briefly, and we haven't really got onto yet. But then the sort of woke right movement in the UK that has taken succor from Fuentes and Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly flirting with it a little bit. This idea that, we kind of become obsessed with race, identity, who's a real American, who's a real Brit. Can you, if you haven't lived here for more than 2 generations or you weren't born here, can you really be a basically the ethnic nationalists are trying to take over in this kind of way, as they have done in America. They're trying to grow on that line in England. It's not really in any way as prominent. The people that are leading the charge of it are pretty discredited people. They're kind of wacko. There's a lot of washed up, Lawrence Fox being a key example, minor member of a great acting dynasty, slightly washed up career. So he's a big figure in that movement. And you've got a kind of people that sort of have been drummed out of mainstream media for various reasons and not necessarily just political reasons. So it is a slightly discredited movement in the UK, but it is there, and it's really interesting to see. And I wrote a piece about this the other day, that we just don't need that woke right argument that's been dominating the MAGA movement, the splits in the MAGA movement over the last 3 or 4 months over this. I mean, you were there at Amfest as well. We saw the big characters of the right go, mainstream household name conservatives trading absolute blows on the stage at Turning Point. You had Bannon versus Shapiro. You had Tucker weighing in. You had Megyn trying to ride both horses. It was a real civil war erupted. There are people that are trying to import that into the UK and trying to import that into Reform, who are saying just because Reform are allowing Muslim candidates, somehow they've surrendered to the Islamists. It's kind of whack, but it's not really working in the same way as it has been in the US, because I think the platforms are much smaller in the UK.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. I mean, I lived in the UK forever. I follow a lot of these guys. I try to keep up as much as possible because the UK is really my home away from home. I would live there, in the summers if I could. But it has been very odd, I think, to see the split and how it has gone across the pond, and how it is in both, Reform and MAGA, the split that is occurring where there's a rift. And obviously it's been way more successful here, unfortunately, with the right splitting. But
I think it is hyper online, though. I think we risk overplaying this too much, because if you sort of just followed the narrative from the debate online, you'd think that MAGA is entirely split down the middle. It's open warfare. Then you look at the CNN polling last week that showed, the movement beyond the influencers, beyond the big names, the actual voters, the people that put Donald Trump in the White House twice, he would argue 3 times, but twice, they actually still remarkably united. And on an issue such as Venezuela and a strike, a strike in South America, not a place America have traditionally had great successes in intervening in the last 50, 60 years, but a very successful strike on Venezuela. Now, you could argue that, the America First isolationist blocs would have been against it. Tucker obviously was very against it. There's some speculation that J.D. Vance was very uncomfortable with a strike on South America.
He's been very quiet on it. We haven't heard him say it.
He did go very, very quiet. He soon popped up in Minnesota though, didn't he? But then you'd think, if you were just following it as a sort of flame war online, you'd think that things were very much worse than they are. But then you see the polling come out, and actually Trump-supporting voters, they loved it. They loved that naked show of American aggression, of American force, American might. And I think because it went well, and because it was over in a matter of hours, actually, America First foreign policy and the Don Roe mantra and getting involved in the Western Hemisphere I think there's a lot more support for it than you would think when it goes well. When it goes wrong, I suspect that's when people would turn. But if you look at the polling, actually, the MAGA is actually still remarkably united. They quite like all this stuff. I'm sure we'll talk about Greenland in a minute. But they they back the president, despite what all of these big kind of voices are on the online and podcast world are saying. And I think that same applies to the UK. If you look at where Reform are in the polls, they're consistent. They've been ahead in the last 150 polls or something, not far off that. They range from anywhere from 24 to 29% in the polls, leaving the governing Labour Party in the teens, the Conservatives in the teens. Labour are bleeding out to the hard left, to the Islamic sort of independents, to the Greens. Reform actually, despite what you'd read online, and you could, and if you dive into Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it now, immediately you can find those divisions. But actually, beyond the online sphere, things actually people don't really give a shit, right? They just kind of they're not as divided as I think some siren voices would have you believe.
I saw this meme the other day. I might have actually sent it to you. And it's like, it was Trump, and it was right after the Venezuela thing, and it says, everybody wants to treat us like we're not a superpower until we act like a superpower. And then it's like, we remind the world why we are so good at what we do and why we do lead Western civilization.
Yeah. Donald Trump's interventions are very different from his predecessors. The war on terror lasted. Well, the war in Iraq lasted years and years and years. The war in Afghanistan lasted years and years and years. Thousands of American lives lost. Look at what he did in his first time when he waxed Soleimani. Everyone said you can't do that. He did it. Look at his strike on the Iran nuclear facilities last year. Quick, in, out, done. His strike on Nigeria at Christmas to defend Christians being slaughtered. One strike, in, out. His raid on Maduro, over in 3 hours. It was by the time that people realized something was happening, the guy with, Maduro was already on his way to a New York courtroom, and Trump announced, mission accomplished on Truth Social. It was a phenomenal intervention. So I think the way he shows America's still a superpower in that very short, massive aerial dominance of where it is, of wherever he's striking. I think that sort of show of force, I think, is quite something. If he tried to put boots on the ground in Ukraine as a peacekeeping force, or sent in boots into, actual troops into Venezuela at long term, I think it would be a slightly different debate.
Yeah, I know. I think that's his showmanship, right? That's his gift of something beautifully entertaining, that's quick, that requires.
Well, he's a TV guy, right? He loves the headlines. He loves the show. Look at that footage they put out. Well, just not even the footage they put out, but it's just the footage of that strike in Venezuela. It was literally looked like something out of a Stanley Kubrick film.
Do you want to know where Maduro got all those different outfits from, though? The man changed outfits like 10 times.
I was trying to work this out. So I think he was wearing his Nike tracksuit, right? Which is now sold out. It's now, you cannot buy that anywhere on the internet now. It's going to be the best Halloween costume.
For Valentine's Day, Harry. Dang it.
So I think he was wearing that when he was just chilling in his palace, right? And then, 60, U.S. Marines, or no, it wasn't Marines, was it? It was Delta Force. Kick his door in with ray guns that were making people vomit and heads explode. And so I think that was his original OG outfit. And then presumably when they got him on to dry land or got him onto the aircraft carrier, presumably they searched him. And so they gave him new clothes. And then he arrived in New York and he changed again. And I mean, yeah. I mean, get the look.
The button up, there was the jumpsuit situation. There was like another pair of pants. I'm going, did they grab like a little something from his closet? Like, what was going on there?
I'm not sure he had time to pack a bag before he was gagged and bagged, but it will go down as a sort of epoch-defining moment, though, that one. I mean, I'm never going to get tired of seeing commies being carted off in cuffs, frankly. I think we should see more of that.
Yeah, don't tell our friend Nikki, but yes, we should. I do want to take Greenland, by the way. You know I want Greenland. I want Greenland so bad. I want Greenland for my birthday. I want Greenland for America's birthday.
For your 40th birthday.
Yeah, and for America's 250th, I think it would be a lovely little addition. I mean, you look at the native Greenland people, the Inuits, they have one of the highest suicide rates in the world. The Danish...
Because it's dark there. That's because it's dark there 23 hours a day.
They also don't get taken care of by Denmark. Denmark doesn't really give a crap about them at all.
Well, I'm very much of self-determination. If the Greenlanders want to break free and do something else, that's entirely up to them. There is only 68,000 of them. You could pay them each £1 million, and I'm sure it would sway things. But Denmark, there are worse places than Denmark. Denmark are, they're a member of NATO. They're a bit humorless, but they're generally good guys. They spilt a lot of blood in the war on terror in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And if you look at the proportion by population size, I think they were the third highest contributor per capita in lives in the war on terror, defending America's interests. So yeah. I do wonder whether this is, stick to, as I said, stick to gag and bagging and arresting commies. Knock over Cuba by all means. Go after the socialists and the tyrannical mad mullahs in Iran. But, I mean, there's no need to start an actual war with our own side.
I agree. I do agree with that sentiment. I think that there's a lot more that goes into this in terms of national security, foreign, all that kind of stuff that we were dealing with. I was just looking at submarines that had been tracked both from Russia, Japan, Iran, and they were tracking them, and how you look at how close they come and how Greenland really, when you're coming from Russia, it's...
Yeah, it is a backdoor into the Western Hemisphere. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do think that the Arctic is going to play out as a really interesting field of influence and sphere of influence in the coming years. But there's already a treaty that America has with Denmark that they can build as many bases and base as many troops there as they want. So I'm not entirely sure it's quite as clear-cut that it's just a national security issue that Trump wants to, because there's obviously a hell of a lot of natural resources up there and lots of nice minerals that I suspect what it's really about. But I don't think I think he's kind of, Rubio pops up on TV and says that, Venezuela proves that when Donald Trump says something, he means it. And then he immediately starts threatening Greenland. I suspect they're going to look for some sort of deal, cut some sort of deal. There's no way. Stephen Miller went on Fox the other night and said, the idea that it's ridiculous to even suggest there's going to be military action because no one's going to fight over this. I suspect they'll do some sort of deal.
Yeah, I think so too. And the mineral rights are so important because you look at what happened with China, especially since the horrifically botched pullout from Afghanistan with Biden, where we lost the 13 service members. I mean, what happened after that became this vacuum, this black hole where China came in, has proceeded to buy up almost every major precious rare mineral mine right that they have. They've been doing the same thing with South America for years. They have been fixing elections.
And right across Africa as well. I mean, the Belt and Road Initiative, across the Caribbean, across Africa, former Commonwealth countries, and they're playing centuries ahead of us.
Well, the thing about the Chinese, I used to live in China, so
Did you? I did not know that.
I did. I'm a very, unique individual, Harry. You should ask me more questions. I lived in Hong Kong. I went to Hong Kong Baptist University, and before that, I sailed down the Yangtze River with my grandparents and spent a few months there as my 8th graduation present. Because what kind of nerdy kid asks for a summer in China as like a 13-year-old? I did, because that's how big of a nerd I am. My Mandarin is not great, I warn you. But Something I learned even as a child there was that they think in dynasties, right? They think
Yeah.
in 1,000-year plans. And we can be so myopic and so short sighted and just think about tomorrow and not think 5, 10, 15, 100, 200 years from now,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, it helps. It helps that they are a violent, repressive,
Yeah.
communist dictatorship. They have
Yeah.
the freedom to think in more than 4 years at a time, and well, more than 2 years of election cycles in America. Yes, they do, but I mean that comes from that is a privilege of not being a democratic and accountable state.
Yeah. And so what we're seeing, like something that's been bothering me that I'm supposed to be writing about, which, I should probably get on that at some point, is the fact that no one has been discussing what happened. So after Bush W left office and we have the Obama era, the Bahamas was by and large pretty unmanned by American diplomats, right? We had quote unquote ambassador who was never there. And that is such an important point of entry. And that's so close to the US, it's an hour off of shore. That what happened was because the Bahamian government is, notoriously corrupt, they allowed China to come in and start buying up land, start buying in their infrastructure, and essentially make like mini little military base. They've pumped in probably hundreds of thousands, by all estimates, of Chinese nationals. And we have no way of knowing what's going on or any other than like, our surveillance and that kind of thing. But we've allowed this base under these two Democratic presidents, under Obama and Biden, to essentially be built right off of our shore. So when you look at the Bahamas, when you look at Cuba, when you look at Venezuela, when you look
Same
at
as same as same as Barbados. Same as Barbados. They've taken over the port. They've taken over the airport. There's bits of whole bits of the Caribbean that China invested. Same with same in the Pacific as well. I mean, their playbook is there to see. It's not rocket science.
But then you have guys like Gavin Newsom, right? So to my point, it was that I think Trump and Marco Rubio and JD Vance, I really love Marco Rubio and how he's been thinking about this as someone who is a Cuban, who does understand, who is very upset that his native country has been, destroyed by communism and a dictator, is that they are looking from a larger, more bird's eye view. And when you consider the fact that guys like Gavin Newsom have sold the ports, the Los Angeles ports, where all the shipping containers are coming in and out, to Chinese companies, to where now almost all of our water ports, all of our marine, coast things where we have these ships, they're almost entirely controlled by China. So we are getting surrounded in every way possible. So when we look at the Trump playbook and at what's going on, I think it's very clear that this is a part of a larger and more long-term plan that we've realized if it's not now, it's never, and we're going to crumble.
I think you're spot on Rubio as well. Is shaping up to be one of the most significant secretaries of state in many years, and you're totally right about his driving mission in South America. But I do think he gets this, and what I think it kind of ties us back to our original point, our opening where we started, is that because it's Trump, people are just never going to give this administration the credit. They're so blinded by their hatred of him. They're still raging that he's won twice. They're still so convinced that he's a buffoon, and they're so convinced that he's just this brash, new, transactional guy, which he can be, and at times is, and sometimes you need that. That actually they just refuse to accept that there's any methods to the madness. There's any coordinated foreign policy. And taking on the oil reserves of Venezuela, literally neutralizes a massive global geopolitical power base of the Gulf, who have been able to hold the West for decades, for centuries. There's coming up for a century now over the price of oil. They can turn the taps on and off and manipulate the oil markets. America controlling, America being energy independent itself, first of all, Europe increasingly becoming energy independent and non-dependent on Russia. The Gulf was massively powerful, and actually, Venezuela and those 303 billion barrels in reserve down there suddenly levels the playing field in a really interesting way that takes power away from the Gulf. It gives America and the West the whip hand over Putin. If they can drive oil, the price of oil down to $40 a barrel, Putin's economy cannot support his war efforts. So there is more than meets the eye. You're so right that Marco Rubio and co and JD Vance, I think especially as well, they are playing a game here. There is a plan, and because it's Trump, because it's Orange Man is bad, so many otherwise sensible people, so many people who have spent years sort of chewing, wringing their hands and chewing all this stuff over, are just so deluded and blind that they just cannot see that actually some of this stuff might be pretty good.
Not just good, great. I still am baffled. I think about this all the time. Why do they hate him so much? Why do I got a message today from someone I went to college with. They sent it last week, but I just saw it. I had, or a couple days ago when I was on GB News and I had said, nah, it's fine. Come on, I'm doing this now with you. Come on. But
I'm joking. They're great. They're great guys.
The headline that they posted from my hit was, as an American, I love that we're deporting people. And I was messaged, that's because you're a fucking fascist. And they just go on about, how much I love Trump. And they try so I feel like they're all becoming Candace Owens.
Well, next time your lefty liberal college friend calls you a fascist, just ask them how many people Obama deported. Like 2.8 million, I think it was. Over the course of 8 years. Yeah. They are going after illegal immigrants. These people are not playing by the rules. These people have skipped the queue. This idea that, America is built by immigrants. Legal immigrants, yes.
But I can't understand what's causing this. It's mass psychosis. What is causing this actual break in
but look at what they did. But look what they did to John McCain. Look what they did to Romney. Romney was pilloried because he said Russia was going to be a threat and could destabilize the European continent again. And he was called a cold warrior, an old, out-of-touch idiot, a buffoon, a warmonger. John McCain, one of the most liberal Republicans, was called an actual nut. George Bush. They went so crazy about George Bush that being a Nazi killer, baby killer, whatever, all of that crap, that actually now they've gone down this rabbit hole that when actually they had pretty moderate, center of the road Republicans in front of them, were so determined to brand those people as Nazis and far right that actually they've just run out of road. They just can't handle it because they keep shouting these names and they keep calling people all these horrific things, you racist Nazis, fascists, as you just said, and yet they just keep losing. They keep people. The window has moved. Where the world is, where the voters are, is so far beyond where liberal left media and political thinkers and trendsetters are. And I genuinely think the fact is that deep down they know, they're beginning to realize and to wake up that they're so out of touch with reality and so out of touch with ordinary Americans and ordinary Brits and ordinary Frenchmen and Germans that actually they're waking up to the fact that they are totally screwed and they are on the wrong side and people don't agree with them. And they're like toddlers. They're getting angrier and angrier and angrier because they can't understand why people aren't just giving in and going down their own way. And it's driving them round the bend. And if it wasn't so serious, it'd be absolutely hilarious to watch.
I agree. I mean, it's still hilarious to watch, even though it's very disturbing. And
it is hilarious to watch. I'll give you that. Well, actually, no, it's not hilarious to watch when people end up getting shot in the face 3 times and, ICE agents are shot and rocks are thrown and Molotov cocktails are going off and there are riots and shops and businesses and schools are burnt down in American cities. Suddenly it's not funny then. That synagogues are being met when there are people in the streets of New York shouting, "We're for Hamas." That's not funny, but it's all a wider symptom of this malaise on the left that they just can't understand why people don't agree with them, and they're becoming more and more extreme. And the more extreme they get, the more dangerous it becomes.
What do you think?
What did you put in this Diet Coke, by the way? I'm on fire.
Uh, it's the hat. That's what I said. It's cocaine in the hat.
It's the hat.
Okay, going to that point, though, here's what I wonder.
I've got to go. I've got my own show to run.
Fine, whatever, but answer me this. This is more fun. Here's
Go
my
on.
question. Yes, I agree, they're delusional. However, they're still getting the female vote, which women are voting more than men. So that being said, it's welcome to 2026, babe. It's the midterm. This is an election year. What's going to happen?
I think things are not as bad as they look for the Republicans. I think actually some of the redistricting stuff will actually help in the end. And it's all going to come down to the economy. If Scott Besant's right and the American economy is going gangbusters by November, or even by April, really, when it will start to be felt in November, prices aren't going to come back down, but they're not going to carry on going up as fast as they are. If the seeds are there, look at, if it wasn't for the government shutdown, growth in Q4, Donald Trump claimed today in Michigan, would have been 7%. That is phenomenal economic growth that can only make things, eventually feel better for the American voter. So it's all going to come down to that. If, as it looks, the economy is on the turn, I think the Republicans will hold the House. Traditionally, it's tough. It's tough for any incumbent administration in the midterms. But there's just something, if they can make it about Donald Trump, if they can somehow get Trump almost not actually physically on the ballot, but be the embodiment of the result, I do think the Republicans might just be all right.
Really? Okay, you're giving me hope because I'm all worried about the filibuster. I had a stress dream last night about it. So we'll have to talk about that next time.
That is a niche stress dream.
I'm a niche person, Harry.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I can't stay longer.
It's fine. I'll just make you come on again. But thank you so much for joining us.
All right. And thank you for my hat. Thank you for my hat.
Always. Bye.
See you later.